Hi, I'm Danielle, and welcome to Unboxing Humans. Each week, I speak with incredible humans about the weird moments that led them to where they are today. My guest this week is Jennifer Dulski. Jennifer is the CEO and founder of Rising Team, a SaaS platform that helps companies increase engagement and scale talent development by equipping managers to lead deeply connecting, interactive team development sessions, remotely or in person, without an outside facilitator. Prior to Rising Team, she has held executive leadership positions at technology companies like Facebook, Google, Yahoo, and Change.org. As a thought leader, Jen writes about leadership and the future of work for LinkedIn influencers and teaches management at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Jen, welcome to Unboxing Humans.
Thanks for having me, Danielle. Great to be here.
Today, impact is a focus for many businesses, more and more every day. But in 1993, when you started your first company, it was not the main focus. How did you know you wanted a career with impact?
I think this has just been part of who I am since I was small. In fact, one of my favorite questions when I interview people is, what were you like as a kid? Because I think there's so much about who we become that is present when we are young. And for me, I just was always passionate about helping other people be their best. It's why I was a crew coxswain in high school and college. I was teaching or tutoring from a very early age. In high school, I actually tutored English at a high school in San Francisco called Newcomer High, where all the immigrants came to learn English for the first year before they went into other schools. So I just have always had this feeling of I am at my best and so grateful when I can help other people be their best.
How did you get involved with tutoring for English as a second language?
I'm honestly not sure. I think that I was looking into various community service options, and I was, again, just really passionate about working directly with people. And I thought it would be fun to work with other people my age. And, I met a lot of really great, interesting friends who had come from other countries, and I had a tiny bit of value to add to them. And they all learned English quite quickly. And it was a great learning experience for me too.
Did you speak another language?
Sort of. I took French, unfortunately, from kindergarten through sophomore year in high school. So I spoke very good French, which was not particularly helpful since most of the students I was working with were coming from either Latin America or Southeast Asia. But in college, I learned two more languages. I did a semester abroad in the Brazilian Amazon. I was interested in climate also at a very, very early age, before climate was really a thing. And so I went and studied rainforest ecology in the Amazon, and I had to learn Portuguese for that. So I have never actually taken Spanish, which would be the most useful language to have in California, but it helps me understand Spanish pretty well too.
So you ended up in the Amazon. How did you even know that climate and the Amazon was a thing to study?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. This is, 30 years ago now. So to be completely frank, what happened was I was very lucky to get to do a semester abroad in college. And I was originally planning to go to Italy and study art history because I loved art and I thought that would be fascinating. And then I realized I only had one shot to do this amazing semester abroad. And I thought, I should probably do something that pushes me a little bit farther outside of my comfort zone. And so I went to the study abroad office. And at the time, this is pre-internet, there were a bunch of catalogs. And I basically pulled out all the catalogs and started flipping through them until I found the thing that seemed the most out of my comfort zone. And that was Amazon rainforest ecology. And I knew, already even then, there was a lot of talk about deforestation and what that meant for the planet. And so I was fascinated by it. And I thought it would be, it would challenge me to go have to learn a new language, to live in the forest. There were many, many, situations with snakes and tarantulas and other wild animals. And it was hard. It was, ironically, the thing that was the hardest was not the jungle, it was the language. It gave me so much appreciation. In fact, extra appreciation for those students I had worked with years earlier of how hard it is to go to another country and not speak the language.
I am always impressed by my international counterparts because I've only lived in the US. And if I had to learn in a different language and take all of my courses in a different language and still be expected to get the same grades and everything, I mean, it is incredible. It's just truly incredible.
Yeah, I have a lot of students in my class too at the GSB at Stanford who also are in their second or sometimes third language. And yeah, I really felt that experience, which helps me build empathy for others in that spot. The first month I remember having a headache so bad every day from just trying to understand so much what people were saying and feeling sort of like an infant because you cannot communicate the way you want. In fact, I lived in a homestay, so I had two little brothers, and I remember they really did not understand that just because I didn't speak the language, I still understood what the words meant. So I remember them saying, this is a pen. You write with it. Yes, I know what a pen is. I just don't know the word for pen. But yeah, it was a great experience.
That's very funny. So, what did you think you were going to do with your career at that point?
So it actually is all coming full circle. I have
Okay.
never written a journal in my life except for one time, which was when I was on this semester abroad. I decided I should write a journal, and I journaled every day when I was there. I never had before and I never have since, but I found this journal probably about 10 years ago, and I read it. And in there, I wrote, this is like my 19-year-old self, I wrote, I'm not sure what I want to do with my life. I will probably either be a teacher or some kind of leadership guru. That's what I wrote when I was 19.
Wow.
And when I graduated from college, I became a teacher, as you know. And over a 25 plus year career, I have learned more and more about leadership. And now I run a company that is all about leadership. I've written a book on it, and I teach leadership at a business school. And so it has kind of manifested itself, I will say. I wouldn't call myself a guru, but certainly leadership focused.
Certainly, many other people would call you a guru, whether you call yourself one or not. That is so interesting. I love stories like that. I had a guest on last season who said something similar. She is an art director, and she said that she made a whole mood board with all of these models and with all this fashion stuff. And she wasn't really like a fashion person. She didn't know why she was doing it, but it really spoke to her. And now she works with models at a beauty and fashion company 10 years later. And she's like,
Right.
I had no idea. It was there somewhere in my psyche.
That's right. Yeah. And it goes back to what were you like as a kid? A lot of these things, come back and resurface later on. And the other thing I do believe is that sometimes they're unconscious or subconscious, and sometimes they can be conscious, and there are steps that we can actively take to make those things happen in our life. So in my book and also in my class and in my work, I have people do something I call the horizon exercise, which is imagining where you want to be, say, 10 years down the line. And you can do this at any point in your life, and thinking really big. And in fact, I ask people usually to think about multiple horizons. I might be interested in starting my own company. I might be interested in going into politics, or I might want to write a book, as you have too. And I'm thinking about the gaps, sort of all the skills that would be required for those things. And then which ones you already have and which ones you don't. So thinking about all the things you have, all the things you don't that need development, and then putting a plan together for how you fill those gaps. And oftentimes people feel so much pressure about their future. I don't know, which decision am I going to make? There's so much pressure. And what I remind people is every choice you make will help you, A, learn something about what you like and don't like, and B, can help you fill the gaps towards your longer term dreams and aspirations, whichever direction they may be. So there's always some overlap about the things that you need, regardless of the path you choose, that will be helpful for you to do in the near term. And that's something that's been helpful to me too.
The mindset of when you look backwards, it all makes sense, like you just said, right? You looked
Yes.
backwards, and at 19, you knew on some level. But if you had to say predict it, you couldn't.
Yeah.
I'm curious as myself. I have the book, I have obviously this podcast, I have my software company, but I also have this other side of me that loves like interiors and how we move through a space, and like service and teaching as well. I thought maybe I'll go be a professor one day, and so I'm always wondering, how do those intersect with each other?
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes, people's careers are a little bit, I'm going to try this and then I'm going to try this and so forth. But one of the things I find, and the reason why I like this exercise, is because the underlying skills often have more overlap than you think. So for instance, we did this exercise in my class a few weeks ago, and I had someone who said, per the examples I just shared, he said, I'm thinking about starting a company, and I'm also thinking about going into politics at some point. And when he made the list of skills that he would need for those things, he realized that one example, which is getting comfortable asking people for money, was a shared skill. Regardless of how different those careers are, they both are fundraisers. You have to raise money for your company, and you have to raise money if you're going to run a campaign. And then he said, okay, even if you break down asking people for money, what are the skills you need? You need to be able to craft a vision. You need to be able to build a network. Like, all those skills are the same, regardless of those two directions. And that may be true also for your paths. If you think about how do you help people move through a space, and how do you help people understand a new topic as a teacher or something, there's, first you have to build strong relationships with people. You have to understand their needs. And so then you think about, how do I build those skills? And sometimes the answers are obvious and sometimes they're less obvious. So I had someone on my team once who realized she needed more public speaking experience, and she didn't really have the opportunity to do that in her job. And so she went out and got a job as a yoga teacher on the side, which wouldn't be everyone's first thought about public speaking, but it is. If you think about it, every day she has to come into class and talk to a new group of people. She's on stage, if you will. And that was a great way for her to help fill that gap in her work towards her dreams.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that for her, she's combining a passion, I would hope, for yoga,
Yeah,
whereas someone else,
exactly.
right, might choose a different interest of theirs to learn that skill, or maybe accidentally learn that skill by engaging with their interests, and then say, "Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
realize I learned public speaking in this way."
exactly. Exactly.
So let's circle back. You graduated, you were teaching, as you said, but you also started a nonprofit, which
Yeah,
I thought to be rare coming out of undergrad.
possibly. And I will say that I started the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania site of what was a nonprofit that started in San Francisco and was then looking to model itself around the country. So it was from scratch in some ways because it was brand new to that city, and I had to raise money and tell everybody about it and sell the vision. And it was also modeled off of an existing
Mm.
organization that worked and drove results and so forth. So that did make it a little bit easier for me. The teaching was connected. So the nonprofit I started it's now called Breakthrough. It was then called Summer Bridge. And the purpose was to help highly motivated, under-resourced middle school students become first generation college graduates. And it was hosted at a school. And so since the program was a summer and after school program, I also taught high school during the year while I was getting the logistics ready for running this program in the summers and after school.
Wow. How did you come across this opportunity?
Yeah, so the program initially started at the high school where I went to school in San Francisco. So I had learned about it, and the teaching during the summers is all done by high school and college students. So I had taught in the program when I was in college, and I will say it was one of the most formative experiences of my life because there's something really unique about this program in that they essentially give all ownership over to very young people. Right? They tell middle school students, you can get on the path to college. We believe in you. We will set high expectations and we will support you to achieve them. And they tell high school and college students, we believe in you. We believe you can teach a classroom of kids on your own, make your own curriculum, help them achieve their dreams, and we'll support you with some, they call them mentor teachers or coaches, but all the teaching is done by young people. Those mentors are only around the first week or two. And that experience of being so fully believed in made me believe that I could do so much, that I thought, sure, when I'm 21, I can graduate from college, move to a totally new city, raise more than $1 million for a nonprofit no one's ever heard of, get all the logistics running, hire the people, manage the team, make it work. Looking back on it, I think, my gosh, that was like kind of insane. But nobody told me I couldn't. And everything I had done up to that point told me I could. And so I did. And looking back on it, it is actually one of the things in my life I am most proud of. So we'll talk about the rest of my career. And I got into tech at that point because I wanted to scale to larger and more people. But at the end of the day, this program, I ran it for 4.5 years. I found a co-director who I handed it over to. He took it on. He found a co-director, and we have passed it down. In fact, one of the students I had my first summer actually eventually became the director of the program years later.
Wow,
and it is
that's beautiful.
Still running. Yeah, this coming summer is the 30th anniversary of the program. And so thousands and thousands of kids have gone to college and have made incredible impact in their own communities and so forth. And so I'm very proud of it. And it was a big lesson for me that you can create something and hand it to other people to make even better than you could. And the legacy will far, I hope, outlive me.
I'm speechless, which is not great for a podcast. It's because it's really a beautiful story. And I mean, to your point, something that's not often talked about. I think today the thought is you build it, you can sell it, or you can close it. But
yes,
most of the time you can't hand it off to someone when it's at, I'll say, an early stage. 4 years is still in a company's life cycle, right? It's still a relatively early stage.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. And so how did you stay connected to impact when you went into big tech?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the reason I went into big tech in the first place was because I believed in the power of tech to help things scale. And, I loved running the nonprofit. And at the same time, it was, kind of repetitive. We did the same thing year after year. And I knew that if I raised twice the money, we could serve exactly twice the students, or maybe a slightly more than that, but not much more. And so I was looking for ways to build things that would scale exponentially as you invested in them. And I really felt that by, I joined Yahoo when it was only 400 people or so, and it was a startup, and it felt like we were empowering people all over the world to give them access to information they didn't have, to help them grow their own businesses. There was so much impact at scale in those jobs. And I will say it was also a period of very heavy learning for me, which I found, if I think about the things that have driven my choices in my career, number one is impact, and number two is learning. Where can I go that I will just learn amazing, new things that can help me be better at achieving the goals and the vision I have. And so in those days, I also remember being part of what was essentially the invention of so many of the things that we use today. Like, I remember the first day we launched Instant Messenger, when we first launched streaming. I ran at the time what we called the biggest sale ever created, where we got everybody on the internet to have a sale on the same day. I mean, some of them were more impact driven than others, but it was a period of invention and learning and scaling impact that I felt good about.
It's hard to think about Yahoo as a startup for me, but Yahoo was a startup like every other startup.
It's true. And it was very cool back in that day too. I thought, I will tell my grandkids that I helped build Yahoo. And at this point, I think I will be lucky if Yahoo's still around when my grandkids are born. But through my tech career, I have done various things that, have been more or less geared towards impact or learning, as the case may be. So since, when I left Yahoo and started my first startup, my co-founder and I really wanted to build something that was focused on neighborhood communities, and that was going to be highly impactful. And what we ended up after several pivots building was something called the Deal Map, which helped people find sales in their local neighborhood. And that ended up being hugely successful. I would still argue it's impactful because you're helping people save money, but it wasn't probably the most directly high impact, save the world kind of business, but it was high learning for me. And then, we sold that company to Google, and I spent a few years there learning a lot about building at high scale again. And then from there, I went to become president and COO of change.org for 5 years. And that was, again, really heavy, direct global impact, which was amazing. And, some choices from there. And now, as you know, I run Rising Team, which our goal is to help everyone in the workforce feel deeply understood, supported, and empowered to reach their goals. And so it's a little bit full circle for me, because what Breakthrough was thinking about how do you help people, really impact their lives at the first moment that is a real lever, which is their education. And Rising Team is about how do you do that in the second lever of people's lives, which is their work.
I'm hearing two definitions of impact. There's, I think, impact as maybe Gen Z would see it today of good.
Yes.
And there's impact of, is my decision or is my work influencing more people than me? Like, can I have a large scope of influence? And I think what's interesting is what you were describing. You said in the beginning, it was more or less one-to-one. And then you made it bigger. And I think now, when I think about the world now, we're in a time where they're conflated. Most things have become, what is the largest scope of my influence? But maybe we should also be coming back to that one-to-one relationship.
I sometimes refer to it as depth and breadth. In my early days of running Breakthrough, I had so much depth. We had 75 students per summer. I knew everyone. I knew their names. I would get letters from their parents. I knew that I was having a meaningful impact, and that the teachers I had hired and the program I had started they were all having a meaningful impact on their lives. And that felt amazing. And as I said, I could only do so many. And so from there, I have gone on to try to scale to more breadth, right? How can I impact the most number of people? I led Facebook groups for a couple of years, and that's a product that's used by nearly 2 billion people. And I could see every day the incredible things people were doing to come to each other's aid and support that would never have been able to happen without a platform like that. And Rising Team, the product I run now, the company, our goal is to make it so that every leader can build that depth, that understanding, and that success for the people on their team. So we're building at breadth, enabling people to do the depth. And for me, part of the reason I still teach alongside running this company is because that's, I get depth in two ways. One is the team that I hire and build and hopefully inspire and grow and invest in at Rising Team. And the other is the students that I have in my class, where I can see what they will go on to do. And hopefully I've made a tiny ounce of impact in their lives. And so I am very grateful to have found a mix of depth and breadth of impact in my life.
Do you think that today employees are not seeing the depth of their impact of their work?
It's interesting. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is they are not seeing the depth of the investment in themselves. So that's the number one problem, is that, we're now in this hybrid workforce and managers are completely overwhelmed. They are the highest sufferers of burnout and lowest resilience and so forth. And so they don't have time nor tools to really invest in their teams. And so most employees are feeling undervalued and lack a sense of connection and belonging. And this is why we built Rising Team. In terms of their own depth of, understanding the depth of impact they're having in their work, I believe that the things that help with that are things like how closely you can connect people to their customers. And, as an example, at Rising Team, we have a Slack channel we call Cookie Jar, where we put amazing customer testimonials every time they come in. So it's, usually every day or every couple of days, there'll be like amazing quotes popped in there. And we call it Cookie Jar because the idea is if you're having a down day or something, you can like reach into the cookie jar and pull out something amazing that your customers said about your work. And so we do need to find ways to help people have line of sight to the impact they're making in their work and to feeling valued and appreciated for that.
I really love that. When I was 22 at my first job, I had a colleague who told me to save anytime I get an email that someone says, even just thank you, like this was great, which because when you've had enough and you're just stressed, you have this folder of emails saying you are doing great. And it reminds me of what you just said. How did you come up with the Slack channel, or did someone on your team come up with it?
I had a Slack channel already that was for customer testimonials. So we had that from the very beginning. Someone on the team suggested the cookie jar naming, which I thought was very clever. And, we adopted right away. And, part of Rising Team also incorporates this. We have, for instance, one of the sessions, we haven't really talked about what the product is, but
I was going to say, we can talk about it.
Yeah. So Rising Team, it's a team development platform. We help managers run deeply connecting experiential sessions with their teams without needing an outside facilitator. And they're on all the topics that we know drive high performing and highly engaged teams. So one example that's in this category is a session we have on appreciation. And basically it walks the team through, everybody creates their own individual appreciation profile. So it says how you want to be appreciated, how often, by whom, in exactly which ways. And it's so incredibly helpful. I actually developed this exercise because I had someone on my team early in my career who said, if I ever do a good job, just pay me more money. Like, I don't really love any of this public recognition stuff, just like a tiny bonus here or there. And at first I was really taken aback by that. I thought, my gosh, I can't believe she just asked me for more money. But the more I thought about it, the more grateful I was that she told me, because otherwise I would have assumed that what she wanted is what I wanted. And I started asking people and having them make these profiles. And it turns out what people want is completely different. Like I have one person on my team who absolutely only wants to be appreciated in private. And his favorite ways of being recognized are input, meaning being asked for his opinion, and scope, being given more challenges. I have someone else on my team who says, the more public the recognition, the better. And I have someone else who half of her whole, like I give them 100%, pie chart, half of her thing is gifts. She says, I really love, it's kind of like the love languages,
I was
right?
about to say the love languages.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, this session starts with appreciation profiles and it ends with appreciation circle, where everybody gets a chance to actively be appreciated by their manager and by the people on their teams. And, those things, especially in a hybrid workplace, don't happen unless you set aside time and are intentional about it. And it's possible for managers to do that, or leaders of any team to do that without tools, but it's a lot easier if you give them the tools so that they just kind of press go and, set a time on your calendar, press go, and then it kind of all happens for you. And that makes it easier for them.
Yeah, it absolutely does. My mind is racing with so many questions, but the first is, do you find that people know their appreciation profiles, or do they have to do some work?
It's a good question. I think there are some things that I think are very clear to people, like public or private. That tends to be a, pretty well-known thing. Sometimes we ask people, what do you want to be appreciated for? So is it your results? Is it your effort? Is it your impact? Is it your expertise? And that's a good example of a question that most people haven't really thought about and needs a little bit more time and thought. So when they fill out these profiles, we usually give them like 15 minutes or so to think about it. And we also let them go back and update them at any time if they change their mind. So you could do some thinking, say, that doesn't feel quite right. I'm going to update it and change it to something else.
I think we need that in our personal lives too. With our friends and family, the gifts was such a big one. I'm really not a gifty person, and it's a curse because I'm bad at picking out gifts because I'm not really a gifty person. So I have friends who are great at the gifts. Their birthday comes around and I'm like, oh, right, I need a gift, because I don't naturally think of gift. I think of a well, thought out message for them, written of how much I appreciate them, because that's what I want.
Me too. I am a card person all the way. I will take a card any day and never need a gift. But my mom is a gift person, and I have learned that I need to have a gift for her and appreciate gifts she gives me.
I mean, I'm not going to say no to a gift, but it's very interesting, and something that I actually talked about in my book as well. We can't assume what someone is interested in. In this case, it's how someone wants to be appreciated. But I think so often leaders also say, I hate this type of work, therefore my whole team must also hate this type of work. And then we accidentally put people down who really do like that, and we alienate them, or we give them the wrong work. Honestly, we give the wrong person the wrong work.
Absolutely. We actually have another session on Rising Team called Natural Talents, which is exactly that concept. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier of like, these are the things that come out often when we're young, and everybody has them, the things that come so easily to you that you love to do, that give you energy, and everyone's are different. So we have taken, there's an infinite number of talents, but what we do for this exercise is we take the 9 talents that are most needed inside most organizations. So things like envisioning big ideas and clarifying complex information into simple pieces, or persuading other people to get them excited about an idea. So there's 9 of these talents, and everybody takes an assessment and gets a spider chart of where you spike on things you love and where you don't. And it doesn't mean you're bad at the things you don't spike. Many people are very good at those things. They just drain them and take a lot of energy. So the whole point is finding the complementary people. I want to have someone who spikes out on the thing that I don't. Yeah. And I have seen so many good examples. We had 2 people on our team early on where we were trying to make some kind of marketing videos. And I had one person who spiked way out on persuade, and also on a talent called cultivate, which is like cultivating teams of people. And I asked her to make this set of videos, and she was great at those things, but she was way in and not happy zone in the talent we call plan, which is how do you put together a timeline and the process for when this is going to happen. And I had someone else on the team who was way out on that talent, and I put them together and it was like magic. But I also tried asking once the woman who spiked on planning to try making one of the videos, and it was horrible. She hated it. It took her 3 times longer. And so, yes, you got to keep people in the zone of their natural talents.
I love that story. Did you create your own tool that measures it, or do you use a tool?
No, we created our own tool. I have used nearly every assessment out there, StrengthsFinder, Myers-Briggs, and the DISC, colors, you name it. I've done it many times probably. And I think they all have value in different ways. And in fact, my team is doing an Enneagram offsite next week, actually. So I value them. What I felt like I was missing as a leader is I don't just need to know about these people's personalities. I need to know about the work they love to do. So I would come out of those things and I would find, okay, this person is an equalizer. That means they always want things to be fair. And I just didn't know what to do with that. What I needed was, I have a project. I need someone to do this, 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 and this. Who from my team should I put on that? How can I help them do the things that make them happiest and most successful? So we made our own assessment. It is, I will say, it's not validated across, tens of thousands of people like those other things are. So for now, what we do is it's an assessment. And then at the end, we have people rate the accuracy. How much does this feel like you? And we are right now scoring 4.3 out of 5. So I think we're doing pretty well on the accuracy, but I don't want to suggest that it's a like widely validated instrument.
I have a section in my book on Myers-Briggs specifically, and reliability and validity. I got very into the stats with it. It's very, very interesting. And I'm looking at the time, and we're quickly running up on our time together. And I'm curious, as a last question, what is the driving motivator in your life now?
Yeah, it's so interesting because we had the last day of class for the quarter, and I shared my sort of most top lessons from my career and from my life. And I will say they were all in acronyms. This is probably a longer story than we're going to get through today, but I love acronyms. I grew up with a lot of acronyms because my family had a list of acronyms we used with each other. We put it on the fridge and so forth. But the acronym I used to describe my sort of culminating life lesson is FOWM, FOWM. It's my alternative to FOMO, and it stands for Focus on What Matters. And it is a lesson that I have learned throughout my life about the fact that we are not only what we do for a living, and the things that matter to me in my life now are also my family, my children, my friends, my teaching, and so forth, and trying to do work that I believe matters in the world. And I say, people don't lie on their deathbed saying, I wish I joined one more board. They say, did I spend enough time with the people that matter to me? And did I do something that matters in the world? And so that's how I think about what motivates me now.
That's amazing. And in keeping with our theme of the podcast of speaking with leaders about who they are, not what they are.
Exactly.
So perfect plug at the end.
Yes.
You can learn more about Jen and her work through the links in the show notes and through the Rising Team website. Jen, thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks, Danielle. Fun to be here.
Since you've made it to the end of the show, I'm going to take a wild guess that you enjoyed listening. So go ahead, check out the links in the show notes and give us a follow. We both know you want to. Unboxing Humans is hosted by me, Danielle Boris. To learn more about my work, go to danielleboris.com, and don't forget to grab your copy of my new book, The Energy of Weirdos. See you next week, and have a fantastic rest of your day.